in the scenario that a firm earns losses, we need to look at their decision in the short run, right? So this is a short run decision only of whether to continue producing and operating at a loss. So that's our second option here, or shutting down. Okay, so they need to figure out, is it worth it to keep my doors open in the short run before they exit the market? Or do they need to close their doors and just take the fixed cost loss? All right, so we're going to walk through that decision making. So in the short run, right, remember our key assumption for the short run, and it's that capital is fixed. Okay, so capital is fixed in the short run, meaning that the firm still has to take on some fixed costs, regardless of if they produce or not. So if our firm hypothetically takes the shutdown option, that means quantity is zero, they're not producing anything. Their profit is still going to be negative, right? Even though they're not producing, they'll have total revenue minus total cost. In this case, total revenue is zero, and their total costs, right, are just fixed costs because without production, their variable cost is zero. So their calculus simplifies down to just negative fixed costs, right? So they're going to have to pay the fixed cost. It's sunk, they can't get it back. Um, the question is this less than what they would lose if they continued operating? All right, so looking at their operating profit, so they're making something, right? Output is greater than zero, it's positive. Total revenue now is going to be positive, and they're also going to have some positive fixed costs as well as some positive variable costs as well as their positive fixed costs that they are taking regardless. And so if we compare these two options, the difference between operating and not is the difference between total revenue and variable costs. So this is what the firm is going to be comparing. How much do they earn when they operate compared to what it costs them to operate? That's what's going to be relevant for their decision making. We can see that this is the key relationship if we do this math of subtracting the shutdown shutdown profit from the operating profit, right? So I'm going to do this work up in the corner here. So operating profit is total revenue minus fixed costs plus variable costs, and that sum is in parentheses. So we have total revenue minus parentheses fixed costs plus variable costs. And we're going to subtract from that the shutdown profit, which is just, let me fix that negative sign here, which is just negative fixed costs. Okay. That's going to be their profit difference between the two options. Okay, so let's go ahead and simplify. So we'll have total revenue, and we're going to distribute this negative across our parenthetical. So we'll have total revenue minus fixed costs minus variable costs, and then we'll do the same thing here. Distribute this negative in. So a negative times a negative gives us a positive. So we have plus fixed costs equal to the difference in profit. So we'll have total revenue minus fixed costs minus variable costs plus fixed costs. So our two fixed cost terms are going to cancel out, and we're left with just total revenue minus variable costs, which is what you see on the slide. Okay, so that's why that is our key comparison for a firm shutdown decision. All right, so what this means is that if they earn more, right, if total revenue is greater than what it costs them to operate, they're going to remain open, right? Because that way their net profit is negative, but it's less negative than it would have been if they'd kept their doors shut, right? And that goes for if it's greater than or equal to, right? If they can cover those variable costs exactly, they'll still operate. Okay, and so this is here in this table, this summarizes the what a firm earns or loses if they shut down compared to what if they operate. So if they're closing their doors, producing nothing, that means they get no revenue and they're taking on those fixed costs, so their loss is just negative fixed costs. If they operate, their output is positive, so they get some revenue, and now they take on some fixed costs in addition to their they take on some variable costs in addition to the fixed costs that they have to take on regardless. And so now they have some returns, right? Potential returns above those fixed costs. And so in other words, their losses are less than they would have been. Right. We can look at this graphically as well using average variable costs, all right? So if we said on the last slide that the firm is comparing total revenue and and variable costs, right? These two terms we can actually rewrite. So total revenue is price times quantity, and variable costs we can transform by dividing by Q. So I'll have variable costs over Q, right? So if we're comparing these two, what we can do is actually pull out, oh, it should be Q over Q. We can actually pull out that quantity term, and that's going to give us, sorry, I erased the wrong thing. That's going to give us price compared to average variable cost because we're just left with variable cost over quantity, and then multiplied by output. All right. And we can ignore the output for the sake of the comparison, right? Because it's really the comparison that we're interested in. So in this case, if price exceeds average variable costs, that means the firm should continue to operate, right? It can cover its cost of producing. Output should be greater than 0. Okay. If price is less than average variable cost, then it needs to shut down, right? It means that it's going to take on more cost by operating that won't be covered by the revenue it earns. All right. So shutting down again means that the firm is still in the market, it's just not producing anything. Okay, so let's look at this graphically. So our average variable cost curve here is this yellow curve that's below the blue one. And what we're doing is comparing it to the price line, right? So to that demand curve. And what's graphed here, oh, excuse me, I didn't mean to zoom in like that. What's graphed here is we have a situation where price exceeds average variable cost at the level of output, right? Price exceeds. And so the firm is going to operate, right? They're not going to shut down. If the price line was below average variable cost, right, in this red line that I've drawn here, that would mean that the firm should then shut down. Okay. All right. The average total cost we ignore for this decision. It's relevant for profit, right? So we look at average total cost for profit. We look at average variable costs for shutting down or not for the firm, that decision. And then marginal cost tells the firm how much to produce. All right, so these curves are all important, and we look to them for different things. We compare them to the price for different questions that the firm has, right? So we can see, right, where marginal cost equals the price equals marginal revenue is where the firm is producing, right? Price in this case is below average total cost, so that means that the firm is actually making a loss in this sense, right? It's a negative profit, but price is above average average variable cost, so the firm is going to continue to operate, right? And I've shown you that derivation that I did again to get that comparison between price and average variable costs here on this slide, right? We can transform total revenue and variable cost into price and average variable cost just by pulling out that Q. All right, and then now that we understand the firm shutdown decision, hopefully you can see better why the firm's short-run supply curve is only that portion of the marginal cost curve that is above their average variable cost, right? Because at a price below average variable cost, the firm is going to shut down, right? It's not going to produce anything. So if anything, the supply curve is kinked, right? There's this portion that's positive and sloping up, and then the rest below average variable cost is exactly equal with the price axis. All right, let's do a practice question. So we're going to assume that the market for corn is perfectly competitive and its equilibrium price is $4, right? So the equilibrium price for a bushel of corn is $4. Kim is a corn farmer with a profit maximizing output of 500 bushels. So Q star, our profit maximizing output is 500 bushels. At this output level, her average variable cost is $3 and her average total cost is $6. And we want to know what her profits or losses are, right? So recall what our profit function is, right? We have total revenue minus total cost, or the one that I said that's going to be much more useful, right? Price minus average total cost times output. So in these givens, we have everything we need to solve for her profits using this second, using the second formula. All right, so we're going to substitute for our given values. So we'll have profit equal to the price, which is $4, minus average total cost, which is 6, right? So we can already see that her profit is going to be negative, right? 4 minus 6 is going to be a negative number. So we know that it's not C or D, and that's all going to be multiplied by 500. Okay, so simplifying, we'll get profit equal to -2, right? That's 4 minus 6 times 500. -2 times 500 gives us negative $1,000. So our answer here is going to be A, right? And that's correct. Okay. Let's do another practice question. So assume that the market for corn is perfectly competitive and the market equilibrium price is $4. So again, we have the price of, we have the price of corn at, sorry about that. It is not wanting to behave with me. Okay. So our equilibrium price is $4. Kim's still a corn farmer, and her profit maximizing amount of corn is still 500. That's Q star. Let me try to rewrite it a little less sloppy. Her average variable costs are $3, and her average total costs are $6, right? So we learned in the last practice problem that she's operating at a loss. So this question is asking, what should she do in the short run? Should she A, shut down to minimize losses? Should she increase her output to increase profits? Should she decrease her output to increase profits? Or should she continue to produce 500 bushels to minimize her losses, right? So in the short run, we're essentially looking at this shutdown decision when we face losses in the short run. And remember, we said that we can compare price and average variable costs to figure out what she should do, right? If price is less than average variable costs, she should shut down. If it's more than average variable cost, she should stay open. All right, so in this case, we have a price of $4 and an average variable cost of $3. So obviously 4 is greater than 3. And so we know that Kim is not going to shut down. All right, so she's going to continue to operate. The next question is, should she just continue producing 500 bushels or should she change the amount she produces, right? Notice that in the givens, we've said that her profit maximizing amount of output is 500 bushels of corn, right? So the amount that she's currently producing, she can't do any better by changing her output, right? If she increases her output, she's going to incur larger losses. If she decreases her output, she's also going to incur larger losses. So she's not going to change her output at all. And instead, the answer is going to be D. She should continue to produce her 500 bushels to minimize her losses. Oops, sorry, there you go. All right. We're going to end this video here, and the next one we'll pick up looking at the difference between producer surplus and profit.